Welcome to The Hill's Coronavirus Report. I'm Steve Clemons, editor-at-large of The Hill. Each day we are interviewing consequential leaders and innovators in the battle against the coronavirus. We've mentioned supply chains more than a few times here on the report. We might forget that everyday central needs like pharmaceuticals and groceries and other essentials are transported by our very large freight system, but that includes railroads. And for more than 200 years, railways have been integral in moving goods and providing transportation here in the United States. In fact, the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency has deemed freight railroads critical infrastructure. And with more than 50 tons of freight moving every day, you can see why that is. Even with COVID-19 bearing down on the American economy, the movement of freight has been largely unimpeded. And then there's transportation, which I take all the time, like up to New York. As trains begin to establish new guidelines and people begin returning to work, railways will be a necessary part of literally getting us moving again. Joining me now to talk about our continued dependence on rail and how the industry is managing during the pandemic is Jeffries, President and CEO of the Association of American Railroads. Thank you so much for joining me, Ian. I had not thought at the beginning of doing these coronavirus reports that I would be reaching into the various corners I am, but railways are important, but I'm going to let you tell that story. Why is our freight system, our railway system, an important story in the time of COVID?
Well, thanks for having me on, Steve. It's good to be chatting with you today, and you nailed it. Railroads are an integral part of the economy writ large. We often say we're the backbone of America's economy. Somewhat unseen to a lot of the country. Folks don't think about the trains traveling across the country that are moving goods for every part of our economy, whether it's consumer goods that end up on store shelves or maybe eventually end up in e-commerce getting delivered to your house, whether we're talking about industrial goods like energy products that literally power our homes and businesses, whether we're talking about products that are used in water treatment to purify all of our water systems to make sure we have clean drinking water, whether we're talking about grains for export or U.S. consumption, food, cattle feed, pretty much anything, building construction materials, automobiles, anything that you see or use in everyday walk of life most likely has a connection to a freight train in some way, shape, or form.
So how have you been able to keep it going? Because honestly, and again, there's a lot I don't know out there, but we've been talking to folks in agriculture, including on the front end, like at restaurants like Tom Colicchio and Jose Andres, and saying the American food system and the supply chain there is in danger of breaking down. We've seen Clorox and toilet paper that there are these gaps out there. And there are also places that just aren't operating. So how have you been able to maintain a backbone that continues to move during this time while so much else of the country has not been operating, let's say, on all spark plugs?
That's a great question. You mentioned it. Freight rail's been around upwards well over 150 years. So our industry has a lot of experience in working through crises and past even pandemics and natural disasters. So I would use one word to describe this industry, and that's resilient. And railroading is a 24/7, 365-day-a-year business. And businesses and communities and individuals continue to rely on the goods we're providing, regardless of whether we're in good times or bad. So railroads took very quick measures to ensure that we could continue to operate and deliver throughout this time, and we have. And quite frankly, that's all a credit to the outstanding leadership and dedication of our employee base, who's been on the job every day and working to deliver the goods America needs. And certainly credit goes to the federal government for ensuring that freight rail is identified as a critical infrastructure operator. That's been incredibly helpful as we navigated state and local orders, steps that localities took to keep their communities safe. Thanks to help by designating rail as a critical infrastructure operator, we were able to continue to work into communities and again deliver those goods that Americans need.
Now, have you been included in some of the support packages, the stimulus packages? Have you been satisfied with the level of financial support that may have come from the U.S. government? I know you were critical I'm going to just read it here, the House Surface Transportation Reauthorization Bill. I caught that in the news this morning, that you're not so happy with that. So where are you with regards to your partnership, if you will, with support from the federal government?
So when we talk about stimulus legislation along the lines of the CARES Act, Freight Railroad, we're in a very fortunate position. We're almost 100% privately financed. We invest about $25 billion a year back into our networks to have them in, quite frankly, the best shape they've ever been. And so when we took a look at stimulus legislation that was moving through Congress, our focus was not on direct funding to the railroads. Rather, our goal was to ensure that that railroad employees who might be affected due to decreased volumes, of which the volumes have been significantly decreased, would be eligible for enhanced unemployment benefits, enhanced sickness benefits. Folks may not know this, but freight railroad employees operate under a different unemployment system, a different retirement system than most American workers do. We operate under the Rail Retirement Board and its retirement and unemployment system. So we needed to work hard to make sure that our employees were covered as well. And so we're grateful for Congress's inclusion of rail employees. And looking forward, we're not seeking federal aid, federal direct funding for the railroads themselves.
What have you done by way of making, I mean, I ask because I just really don't know what's involved, but to make both the workplace safer for your own employees in this time, but also you've got passengers. I mean, I think Amtrak's part of AAR, right? So,
right.
Part of this is the question, there's both, I guess it's the back of the picture view of those people moving freight, the other side of people that are using your system as a retail customer. How have you been able to set new norms, new practices in place that take public safety, create new health guardrails for the running of your systems?
Absolutely. So let's start with the employee base, because quite frankly, without rail employees, the railroads aren't going to be moving and goods aren't going to be getting delivered. So most rail employees, by the nature of railroading, they can't work from home. They need to be on the job site helping the network run. So railroads quickly took steps to reduce risks and ensure that railroaders had a safe working environment. And that included steps to ensure appropriate social distancing in the workplace, even inside the locomotive cab. Use of PPE is pervasive throughout the industry, whether it's masks, gloves, related items as well. And then increased frequency of sanitization and cleaning throughout work sites, again, even inside the cab of the locomotive. And our results have been encouraging, and we feel that between an employee base that, quite frankly, is used to strict adherence to safety protocols day in and day out. We work in a very heavy industrial environment, so safety is always going to be the priority, regardless of the situation we're in. So, we have a strong, dedicated employee base that's used to operating under strict rules. And again, kudos go to them for their great operations and their great work throughout this time, and the steps, again, that we were able to take to create a safe working environment for them. Now, shifting to the consumer of passenger rail, Amtrak absolutely is a member of the AAR and suffered pretty dramatic ridership losses during this time, along the lines of what you saw in aviation, upwards of 90% in some cases. And, we're thrilled to see Amtrak, for example, on the Northeast Corridor between Washington and New York and up to Boston, is bringing its popular Acela train back online as of this week. And they have taken a number of steps to ensure consumers can have a safe traveling experience. And again, that goes to frequent cleaning inside trains. That goes to ensuring that not only employees but passengers are taking appropriate measures via mask wear and other protective equipment. So, I'm confident that Amtrak will absolutely provide a safe riding experience for its customers today and into the future.
Well, I spent a lot of time on those Amtrak trains between New York and D.C. I'm sure you do. I was probably on one of the last ones, and I want to get going again. I guess, the other side of this that I'd love to hear your thoughts on. We're in a complicated time. You're a major association chief here in Washington, and I know this is not really your normal sandbox to play in, but the country is not in a good place right now. It's divided. You look at Congress, got a couple of bills on stimulus. They went well. My office, where this studio is right now, is half a block away from Lafayette Square, where we've seen so much action. What's your North Star in operating in an environment where the nation is so divided. It's complicated for you to take sides in any of this. But how do you, in this moment, get it right by way of your employees, your association members, and give them guidance on a time when obviously the nation is not in a healthy place and we don't know where we're going to be as we approach this election?
Right, and that's an issue that we're all grappling with right now. And I can affirmatively say, without any compromise whatsoever, that there is no place for hate, for racism, for bigotry, not only in my industry but in society today. And we certainly stand by all those expressing their concerns about this and stand with them. And this country has a lot of work to do, and we're going to be doing it by working together. As one, as we've heard so much talk about over the last few months, but now more than ever, whether it's working on issues around race and police brutality and related issues along those lines, or whether it's about coronavirus response, we should be looking for ways to work together as one, because taking the lone path is not a way to success. And I think when we look in the mirror and we examine ourselves, we have more in common than we do different. And to me, there are absolutely paths forward that we can chart working as one. And nothing's easy. There are immense challenges this country is facing right now. You certainly articulated that as well. But so my North Star is looking for commonalities amongst different parties who have different views. What can we agree on? Can we agree on the outcome we want? And then let's talk about how we get there. And that runs the gamut of whatever issue we're looking at.
Another thing that's going to happen after this phase or this era of coronavirus is I think you're going to see more real efforts to reshore some manufacturing back into the United States in a serious way. I was talking to former legislator, former Representative John Delaney, who was running for president, stepped out and said, we need something like a What We Need in America Act that takes stock of manufacturing deficits that are important for our basic security in the country, like in pharmaceuticals area. Mm-hmm. That's going to be you're going to be very much a part of that as well, because a lot of that raw materials production or various elements of more PPE production, the 3M is upping its production of masks, for instance, from 1 billion a year to 2 billion a year, most of which will be done in the United States. In facilities that have been retooled for that. I mean, these are massive numbers, massive new capacity that will emerge in the United States. Are you prepared to be able to carry all that? Because I think most of it is going to end up on your freight systems.
We are absolutely prepared and look forward to doing that. This system, this integrated rail system throughout the country, we have about 140,000 miles of railroad. It's in the best shape it's ever been in. And quite frankly, all of our railroads have made a number of changes in recent years to free up capacity, to streamline operations. And so they are 100% open for business. And we're ready for a manufacturing renaissance, because you're exactly right. Those goods are going to move by rail. And the railroads go as the economy goes and go as our customers go. So we've been working with them frequently throughout the past 3 months to make sure we can adjust to meet their ever-changing needs, but also looking forward to the future and looking forward to that day when we see the economy start to roar back to life, and with that rail traffic as well. And we absolutely look forward to working to bring more manufacturing back here to the U.S.
In our last minute or so, and I know this is going to sound silly because I've always been a fan of the railways. My great uncle was a conductor on the Santa Fe Railroad. I've got his conductor hat and all that. At home, I collected toy trains, etc. So I'm into that. But we have a lot of policy people watching this show, and I would love for you to share with them what's the thing that you find that people don't know about the railway system that they should know. What's the most unknown but important thing that you'd like to impart to folks as we depart today?
So I'll leave you 3 things, I think,
okay,
because I think to me they're some of the most important things to always keep in mind. First and foremost, freight rail in the U.S. is almost 100% privately owned, privately financed. Like I said, we invest about $25 billion of our own dollars back into our network every year. So there's not that reliance on federal funding. Number 2, we operate the safest form of surface transportation out there in the U.S. And our workers, I talked about them earlier in our discussion, they go to work every day focused on safety, number 1, and getting the job done. And so every single day, our company's first goal is to make sure everyone who goes to work every morning comes home to their families every night. And we're not there until we have 0 incidents, but we're in the safest time in this industry's long history, and we'll only continue to drive more safety as time goes on. And number 3 is the environmental benefits of moving things by rail. You think about the fact that one train moves about as many goods as 100 to 120 trucks. That's reducing congestion. That's pulling trucks off the highway. We love our truckers; they're partners. But reducing congestion, reducing emissions. We can move 1 ton of freight on 1 gallon of diesel over 470 miles using trains. And so the environmental benefits are huge. So I would say safety, environment, and private investment. Those are 3 things to always remember when you think about freight railroading.
Well, Ian Jeffries, thank you so much for sharing those thoughts with us today. We'll be looking forward to watching how this goes, and I look forward to getting back on Amtrak. Thank you all for joining us. I'm Steve Clemons. We're going to see you next week. Have a great weekend. Stay safe and be well.